Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Early Edge. A very happy Thursday as the WM Phoenix Open gets underway. We've got a lot of Super Bowl to talk about, NBA picks, NBA deadline, a lot going on right now. Let's take a look at the recap screen before we bring in the stars of the show. A losing day, 2-3-1. It's not a terrible day by any means, but 2 wins, 3 losses, 1 push. We got to do a little bit better than that. Probably goes 1 for 2. Tom Casale, I mean, geez. This guy's coming through every single time, it seems like. High point team total over 74.5. I think they got to 78 and did not cover the 5-point spread. Interesting note, because Tom didn't necessarily like the -5. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's improve on 2-3-1. We're down a man today. Buckets had to attend to something, but we still have 2 very important pieces of the early edge. And by the way, we've got Buckets pick as well. Mikey B, Danny Brasco, a lot to talk about. Mikey B, I want to start with you because the trade deadline, correct me if I'm wrong, it comes and goes within the next 8-10 hours. It's certainly sometime today. A lot has happened over the last 48, 36, maybe 72 hours. Any new things to discuss?
Yeah, the NBA trade deadline is at 3 p.m. Eastern time today. So we've only got 5 more hours for trades to be made. If you're just waking up and we are your first show that you're waking up to, the Lakers made another big trade last night. They got Mark Williams from the Hornets. That fills their massive void at center that they created when they traded away Anthony Davis. Mark Williams is one of the more talented young players in the league, but the reason why the Lakers were able to get him from the Hornets because he's been hurt a lot. He has barely played in his career. I don't think he's topped 50 games in a season his first 2 seasons. It's a big addition for the Lakers. They had to give up Dalton Connect, a first-round pick.
Wow.
A pick swap. But I think it's a great home run trade for the Lakers. They needed someone who could give them some defense and rebounding, and Williams can certainly do that.
So that's interesting because I think a lot of people look at Dalton Connect as like a pretty big piece, a scorer, but I guess the Lakers had a lot of that. So maybe did he just become very expendable with, obviously Luka, LeBron, guys like Austin Reeves that can kind of do the Dalton Connect thing? Because I think a lot of people don't really know Mark Williams because of the injury stuff. Sounds like you love the trade for the Lakers.
Yeah, I do love the trade. They basically had 2 assets left to deal, or 3. They had Connect, they had that 2031 draft pick, and then they had Austin Reeves. So if they wanted to upgrade the center position, they were going to have to get rid of those assets, some combination of those assets. Now Austin Reeves comes, maybe he's like your super 6 man off the bench. He covers LeBron if LeBron gets hurt. But Mark Williams, there was rumors about maybe Nikola Vucevic to the Lakers. I would have loved that as a Bulls fan just because we maybe could have gotten that first-round pick from the Lakers. But he would have been a terrible fit because he plays no defense. They don't need scoring. They need defense, and that's exactly what they got with Mark Williams. If he stays healthy, this is going to be such a major lopsided trade for the Lakers. It's going to be awesome.
Wow. All right. That is very exciting news if you're a Lakers fan or maybe just a fan of the NBA, because while ratings are down, trades like this move ratings up quite a bit. All right. Speaking of ratings being up, we've got Mike McClure in the chat. So say hi to Mike. Ask him anything you want. Greg Goose Hayes, you asked if FFT DFS will be today at 11 o'clock. Well, you are correct. It's going to be me and Mike McClure and Meg Schaap on the Fantasy Football Today YouTube channel at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. In other words, in 54 minutes, we'll be tackling the Super Bowl and the showdown slate and all of those things, prop related and otherwise. So make sure you tune in to that. All right. Speaking of the Super Bowl, Danny Brasco, I'm about to give out a golf pick. I'm going to give out a golf pick right now because I have a lean that actually starts in a few minutes. But we just found out, we just had confirmed that there's a Super Bowl pregame show from 5 to 6:30 on Super Bowl Sunday. Obviously, you're going to be a part of it. I'm going to be a part of it. We're going to have a lot of people a part of that show. A, are you excited about that? And B, I noticed that not only do you have UFC picks today, but you're dropping a Super Bowl pick today as well, correct?
I'm super fired up for that show. It's just going to be long running. All the analysts coming through, firing away picks. Also, I'm one of these weird people that prefers to watch the big game, the big fight in complete silence by myself.
Me too.
I just need to be dialed in. I need to see every single thing happen. And I've been invited to a Super Bowl party. It looks like it's going to be fun, but I'm happy to have that slot on the pregame show to kind of use it as an excuse to be home and lock in Dolo by myself right here. So I think that's the move. I'll have a Super Bowl pick later on in the show for you guys. And yeah, UFC 312 talk as well. So good show today. Man, this trade news is wild. Mikey B, do you think, a quick question for you on that news, Do you think the Lakers are mortgaging away their future to get LeBron one more?
But the thing is, the guys that they got don't mortgage their future. They got Luka Doncic and Mark Williams, who are two young guys to build around. That's why if you're going to get rid of all your assets, they don't have any picks to trade anymore now. They've traded them, so they're done. This is it. To get two young guys like that, and they kept Austin Reeves. So when LeBron does retire in a year or two, then they've got Luka Doncic with Austin Reeves, and that's a good pairing. So yeah, I don't think they gave up everything that they could trade, but they got young players. It's not like they got a couple of geezers. It's not like they got we traded for Draymond Green and Bradley Beal. It's not one of those things that they did. They got good young players.
It's the opposite of the Phoenix Suns, right?
Yes,
I mean, a couple of years ago, I was dogging the Phoenix Suns. I was saying they're not going to win, but a lot of people like them, and they got Durant past his prime. They got Bradley Beal kind of well past his prime, and they didn't have any dogs on that team, and it's not a good makeup. All their bench players went away too to the Eastern Conference. So I do agree with Mikey B that this is a solid makeup. All right. Let's get to some picks. I'm going to start. You're not going to like my pick because it's really juicy. But don't forget, I gave out 2 picks yesterday. One was minus 130. The other one was plus 100. And I know everybody in the chat already knows and has probably made those picks. I cannot resist basically fading Max Homa. Until he becomes unbroken, I'm going to continue to fade him with a guy that I like in the outright market. Now, granted, my outright picks were without Scotty Scheffler, so I don't want to say take that with a grain of salt, but just know I like Tom Kim outright, but it's in the without Scotty Scheffler market. I'm taking Tom Kim minus 155 over Max Homa. Again, I almost never give out juice like this. Even minus 140s, you're rarely going to see from me. But because Max Homa has been so bad and Tom Kim's been really good, particularly lately, particularly on approach, I'm going to go ahead and lay the number here, minus 155. I will say this about Max Homa. This is not a lock by any means because the last 2 rounds of last week's tournament, he did look kind of okay, and he's been pretty good at TPC Scottsdale in terms of his course history here. With that said, we haven't seen vintage Max Homa for about a year now, and Tom Kim is really coming on. I do think he can contend here, so I'm going to lay the minus 155. Now, I will say this is one of those quirky ones that's on only DK in I shouldn't say round matchups, 3-ball matchups. You scroll down and you can find this. Because of that, I'm going to give you a 3-ball lean that you can get absolutely anywhere, including BetMGM. We're going to go with Gary Woodland. This is plus 120 over Jake Knapp and Luke List. All 3 of these guys are kind of similar course fits, but they're all pretty good course fits at that. Jake Knapp getting a lot of steam. Luke List, again, a decent course fit, but Gary Woodland playing pretty well. He was almost a first-round leader candidate for me. I do like the plus number, so that is a lean. Gary Woodland plus 120 over Luke List and Jake Knapp. That one, the reason I'm going first with picks, that one starts in, I think, like 10 or 15 minutes. So if you want to get that lean in, you got to get it in now. The Tom Kim pick doesn't start for another few hours. So you got time on that one. And don't forget, I gave out 2 picks yesterday. I think at least one of them has started. So go back and get those picks in if you haven't already. Buckets is in the chat. He says allergic reaction was filming stoppage time and producer goes, Buckets, your face, LOL. Yeah, so Buckets alerted us right before the show. He was having an allergic reaction. I'm sure he's fine, and I'm sure he'll be back on BPE Friday, but the guy doesn't want to not be a part of the show, Danny and Mikey B. So he's in the chat, which we absolutely love. And Danny Brasco, I got to hand it to you. You're always in the chat as well. Mike McClure being in the chat, I think everybody feels good about you all being in here. Mikey B, let's get to some more picks, maybe with a little less juice than what I just gave out. Amen Thompson, James Harden, go.
Yeah, we're going to preface this by saying, again, the trade deadline is at 3 o'clock. Be very, very careful playing any sides whatsoever. I wouldn't place any side bets until like 3:30 or 4 o'clock when we know we've got all of the trade deadline news to see who is and who is not available. So first pick, Rockets-Timberwolves game. Amen Thompson over 13.5 rebounds and assists at minus 128. Fred VanVleet is out for the Rockets. Now, he got hurt Saturday against the Knicks. He played only 17 minutes in that game, and he has missed the last 2 games. So in those 3 games, Thompson has combined for at least 14 rebounds and assists each time. In one of those games, he had a triple-double against the Knicks. Over 15 games since becoming a starter, Thompson has averaged 10.3 rebounds and 5.1 assists over 39 minutes per game. I know the Timberwolves are a good defensive team, but it is the second game of back-to-back set for them, so they might be a little tired. And I like Amen Thompson over 13.5 rebounds and assists. Then we're going to go to the Clippers-Pacers game. James Harden over 9.5 assists at -106. He has at least 10 assists in 8 of his last 12 games. 2 of the games that he missed during that span, he had 9 each, so they were near misses. What I like here, Clippers have a clean injury report. Kawhi, Norman Powell, Ivica Zubac are all supposed to be available. The Pacers have played at the 6th fastest pace in the league. So with all of his weapons at his disposal in a fast-paced game, I like James Harden to go over 9.5 assists.
All right. People already making fun of my pronunciations, which honestly is probably very, very well deserved. And it's really a nice segue to me giving out Bucket's pick, because I'm not entirely sure what to do with this one. I thought I was going to have an easy time, but now that I look at this thing, I feel like I'm reading like a piece of literature here. Bucket's pick is, let's see. I could just skip the front part because it's rhymes of whatever. Okay, but let's just try it. All right. Buckets is in the chat. I think he's still in the chat. He's probably laughing at me. Burgoyne Jaloux versus Rhymes. Rhymes over 1.5 team total, plus Valencia versus Barcelona. Barcelona over 1.5 team total. Okay, so we've got a couple of team total overs here in Rhymes, which I'm not even sure I'm pronouncing right, over 1.5, and Barcelona over 1.5. That parlay pays -110. Danny Brasco, I didn't do terribly there, right? I mean, I'm maybe you don't know, but like I had to have hit like 70% of that, right?
I feel like some French dialect and phonetics came into play there. I think that's French. So if we're there, then you nailed it.
All right, fair enough. Mikey B, like no reaction. He's like, nope, see ya. I don't think you nailed it at all.
You nailed it, see ya. Those were perfect. Let's just say it now. That was perfectly pronounced. Great job, see ya.
Well, I kind of needed the pep talk, so I'll take the sarcasm any way you slice it. All right, Mike B, do you like Norman Powell over 20 points? A popular guy in the SportsLine universe. Thoughts on Norman Powell? By the way, we have a SportsLine pick from Prop Bet Guy later on in the show. Go ahead, Mikey B.
Yeah, I did look at his prop. I believe it's set at 22.5 points. I would lean over there, so I would definitely like him. If you want to put him 20-plus points in a parlay, maybe you want to do something conservative like Powell 20-plus points and James Harden 8+ assists, something like that. You might be able to get near even or slightly over plus odds for that. I would like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we're looking at alt points and alt assists, volleyball buckets with a series of periods. I guess that means, I don't know what that means actually. But Mr. Big says, I did an excellent job. BetMGM's doing an excellent job with this promo. I'll say it again. If for some reason you're not a SportsLine member or a BetMGM member, if you will, this is the time to sign up. If you haven't signed up yet, sign up now and you'll get up to $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM, plus a 1-year free subscription to SportsLine with bonus code SportsLine1500. Get exclusive member-only picks for all major sports with proven models and 40-plus Vegas experts, plus predictive tools for pick'em, brackets, player stats, and more. Get this offer in 4 easy steps. Download the BetMGM Sports app and register an account using bonus code SportsLine1500. Make your first deposit of at least $10. Place your first wager and receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if the bet loses, and claim your free 1-year subscription to SportsLine in your BetMGM inbox. Ladies and gentlemen, that sounds really great. And what else sounds great is Danny Brasco not only giving out UFC picks, more UFC picks, because he was on earlier doing that. He's going to give out a Super Bowl pick too. We got a SportsLine pick. We got a lot to do. We're going to do it right after this message from our partners.
From sweet to elite to the Final Four.
We're back on the Early Edge, brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. We got volleyball buckets in the chat. We got Mike McClure in the chat. We got Mikey B. We got Danny Brasco. We got me for whatever that's worth. Danny, I got to see the shadow boxing. Let's start with, I know you have kind of like 2 sports to go over. Let's start with UFC and reset, because it looks like you've got 2 more picks for UFC 312.
That's right. I was giving out prelim picks on Tuesday's show. Speaking of the chat, speaking of Tuesday's show, Sia, shout out my guy, M Squared. He gave out a team total under. That was, I think, under like 62.5. They scored 40 points. I bet the old under 50 points, and I thought, man, I'm being greedy trying to chase plus money. Mike just smoked that one. So shout out, be in the chat. There are always picks to get. That's why I come to the show, because you guys are pretty smart too, man. I tail. So that being said, maybe if you like these, tail some UFC 312 picks. I got 2 in the co-main and main event for you guys. Let's start with the co-main. It's the champion, strawweight champion, Wei Li Zhang, looking to defend her title against Tatiana Suarez. And it's a bit surprising to see Wei Li Zhang as the plus 105 dog, two-time dominant strawweight champion, looking to make her third title defense. And Suarez, who's just 10-0, has surged up to this spot. Before she took a break in the UFC, she actually dealt with cancer and beat it. She was one of the most dangerous fighters in the division and still is. I think odds makers know that. You take a look at the method of victory props, they're scattered all throughout the board. Odds makers truly don't know how this plays out. Wei Li decision, Wei Li knockout, Suarez sub, they're all priced very similarly at good plus money. So I think the most prudent method to attack this fight would be playing an alternate method of victory, double chance. What that means is that you're going to get two methods on either fighter. So if Wei Li wins by decision, takes this fight deep, wins on the scorecards, or Suarez uses her nasty physical grappling, snatches her up on the ground and chokes her out, you're going to cash this bet at minus 125 odds. I think that's a good way to play it. Those are the two most likely outcomes. Suarez has never been in a 5-round fight. So maybe Wei Li can drag her deep, out-volume her, and show her that, there are levels to this game when you're here at the championship level. Or Suarez's grappling is truly that dominant and that menacing. Wei Li was taken down multiple times by a lesser wrestler in her last fight. She could get dominated on the ground. I'm going to take that sub angle as well to give myself sort of a hedge against the plus money champion. It's a little suspicious. Speaking of which, Sean Strickland and Dricus du Plessis square off for the second time after a razor close first fight in which Dricus won a narrow split decision that a lot of the MMA community disputes and thinks that he did not win. And Sean Strickland opens now as a plus 170 underdog. It feels like bait, guys. I feel like the odds makers are onto something here. A lot of people are going to bet on Strickland for that reason because they feel he won. But I think Dricus wins this fight. So I'm going to bet it this way. He's minus 205, which seems a little bit juiced. I'm going to add in the over 2.5 rounds, which is something that my buddy Gippers picks in the chats did as well. And that's going to make this plus 100 to get even money. Dricus just has more ways to win the fight, I think. Strickland, such a sophisticated style with his Philly shell defense, those parries. His forearms are like wooden blocks and planks. They just block everything in front of it. And his defensive style is very tough to deal with. But he's really hard when he's the one moving forward and applying that forward pressure. Dricus was the one moving forward for 23 of 25 minutes in their last fight. And I think that edges it out. He just has this clutch factor about him, the way to find that big punch, that takedown, that way to edge out the round. I think he could put more damage on Strickland this time around. And I think he benefits more from having fought him once already. I think he can adapt and win the fight in more ways. I'm going to go with Dricus to win the fight and go over 2.5 rounds to get to even money.
All right. That was some great analysis as usual. But Danny, the buck doesn't stop here because we've got a Super Bowl pick. Obviously, if you're a member of SportsLine, and especially if you're in the SportsLine Discord, you're not only getting picks, you're getting a lot of analysis. And, everybody knows SportsLine has model plays and things of that nature that you can look at as well. Pretty much edges everywhere. With that said, Danny, you recently put in a Super Bowl pick, and I thought, might be a good idea for you to give it out because we can promote the fact that we've got this show from 5 to 6:30, which isn't a surprise show. Everybody's expecting us to have an expanded Super Bowl show. What you're not expecting is some additional personalities that you don't normally see on the early edge. For example, Dave Richard. That's just one of many not new personalities. He does the prop show on the early edge, but we're going to have a lot of guests coming in and out of there. Both Will Brinson and I will be hosting and doing some analyst work. A lot going on. So hopefully everybody can watch that. But you're going to be on it too, Danny. And one of your picks is likely to be a Patrick Mahomes rush attempt over. Go ahead.
You know it, Sia. We've cashed it in back-to-back weeks. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let's go for 3 in a row. This number is up from 4.5 to 5.5 rush attempts. I still like it. Patrick Mahomes' sneaky rushing ability just always seems to come around in January and February. In the regular season, he only went over this number 3 times, but 7 and 11 carries in both playoff games thus far. I like it for multiple reasons. Number one, like I said, that pump fake, and then take off. Mahomes just loves to do that in clutch time. But also, the kneels get us rush attempts. And often the Chiefs have been playing with the lead closing the half, which gets you a quick rush attempt if they decide to kneel it out and not run an extra play. Or, of course, if they have the final possession of the game and are leading. But really, it's because of Vic Fangio's defense that he's faced Patrick Mahomes 10 times. And although I mentioned that 8 times, Mahomes is 8-0 against him and 6-2 against the spread, I should mention a little wrinkle to that. Fangio, although he struggled and hasn't beaten Mahomes, has successfully gotten to him in 2 games. 2 of those performances were 2 of Mahomes' 20 worst in his career in terms of EPA per play. And he was pressured on more than 20% of his dropbacks. Jordan Davis And Jordan Davis can really get that middle pressure that I think flushes Mahomes out of the pocket. So you put together the clutch rushing ability, the kneels, and that middle pressure and the familiarity that Fangio has, knowing he's got to get to Mahomes. He's got to get to that beatable KC offensive line, see if they can attack that left tackle. This is the only way the Eagles are going to have success, and that breeds a Mahomes over 5.5 rush attempts per out.
It's interesting because if you've been following me and what I've been saying about this Super Bowl and a prop that I'm eyeing, it's Patrick Mahomes completions over. And it's part of the reason for that is the offensive line that can fail against Philly in the amount of time it takes for Patrick Mahomes to get the ball out of his hands. Two guys like not just Travis Kelce, but Xavier Worthy. So that's not a prop I'd put in because that line's been toggling back and forth between 23.5 and 24.5 completions. But how Kansas City runs their offense is definitely going to be a talking point in that Super Bowl show. Also on FFT DFS at 11 o'clock. If you have, there's some questions football related, I think, to Mike in the chat. If you have questions about the game, whether it's fantasy football or I should say daily fantasy related or not, come over at 11 o'clock and talk to me, Mike, and Meg, because we're going to be answering those questions. It's not just strictly going to be a DFS showdown show. We'll get to all of those. I got to get to a SportsLine pick. We saved, I don't know if it's the best for last. It depends if it hits or not. But I do know that prop bet guy has multiple picks on SportsLine, and one of them is this. Michael Porter Jr. under 18.5 points at -125. Again, courtesy of prop bet guy. And that's not the only pick he has over on SportsLine. Mikey B, before we adjourn, before we get to the recap screen, was there anything in the chat you needed to address?
Wu-Tang Forever asked, what about Jackson Hayes over 7.5 assists and rebounds? I do like that simply because Mark Williams is not going to be available tonight. Luka Doncic is not playing yet either. So I think Jackson Hayes should still play a lot. I do like that over. A little bit of juice there, but I do like it.
And then this Kirk Schroyer question, Mikey B.
Yeah, Drew Holiday over 9.5 points. I'm just going to say this. I don't bet a lot of player props on the Celtics simply because any night one of them can be awesome. And so you never know who's going to score. I would lean over there, but I prefer just to stay away from the Celtics player props.
All right, and Danny Brasco, there was a question from Jeff Stenberg regarding Suarez, and I think we're going to bring it up in a second. There it is. It's you can read it, but Tatiana Suarez, your reaction to this question?
He's not wrong. She's dangerous. I mean, a plus 800 KO is spicy. I don't see that KO, but if she's mauling her on the ground, sometimes they're good enough defensively with the jiu-jitsu that you just have to keep punching and the ref jumps in and stops the fight. So that's certainly possible if she's succeeding on the ground. I'm not mad at the sprinkle there. I wanted to address one thing that Mr. Big said. He said, it's hard to me to look away at plus 180 on Strickland. I got to sprinkle that. My question to you when you look at odds is, cui bono? Who benefits, right? Why would the books set him at plus 180? And my logic is this. I think you make Drecus minus 210. You make it too expensive for the sharp, smart bettors to back him, and you make Strickland plus 180, a guy the public feels should have won the last one. You give him the bait to take the plus money. That's what I feel books are doing, so better be warned.
Danny is one of the sharpest I've seen or heard, so don't take that with a grain of salt. Really lean into what he's saying there. Mikey B, we do have to go, but we got maybe 30 seconds before we get to the recap screen. Wes is in the chat, Wes Roberts, and you got him a lot of Pampers with the Pampers parlay last week. I don't know if you have a parlay. Is there anything, any direction you would go with new father Wes Roberts to go 2 for 2 on a Pampers parlay?
Yeah, I haven't built any parlays yet this morning simply because I want to see news throughout the day. I did mention that Norman Powell. I did try and do that quick when I saw Wes. It looks like Norman Powell 20+ points and James Harden 8+ assists is like minus 109. I don't like that odds. If when alternate lines come out, maybe do Norman Powell 20+ points and James Harden 9+ assists. Once alternate lines come out, you can probably get that over plus 100. If I find one that I really like, I'll put it out on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, and I'll do that later today.
We're going to call it Twitter. We're going to be contrarian and call it by its old name. Mikey B, your Twitter is at Roto Mike Barner, correct? Roto Mike Barner. Y'all got to follow him if you don't already. And somebody harass him later, maybe after the trade deadline, and be like, Mikey B, we need another Pampers parlay. I expect not just one of you, but all of you to harass Mike Barner at Roto Mike Barner. Add him if you haven't already, and make sure you get a Pampers parlay round 2 for Wes Roberts. He says, thank you, sir. Absolutely. All right. Let's get to the recap screen before we finally get you out of here. I'm on Tom Kim minus 155 over Max Homa. Now that's one of 3 picks. And don't forget, I've got my first round leaders and my outrights, which I put in the SportsLine Discord. I put on this show and on Twitter as well. Buckets, he's not here, but he's here. Parlay, Rhymes over 1.5 team total and Barcelona over 1.5 team total at -110. Again, that's a parlay. UFC 312. Oh, here we go. Dricus Duplessis, money line plus over 2.5 at even money. Wheelie by decision, Suarez by sub -125. And a Super Bowl pick, Patrick Mahomes over 5.5 rush attempts at -102. Thompson over 13.5 rebounds plus assist -128 from Mikey B, and James Harden over 9.5 assists at -106. And then finally the SportsLine pick. It's prop bet guy. It's Michael Porter Jr. under 18.5 points at -125. All right, we kept you a couple minutes too long, folks, but we had a great show. It was just the three of us. But it was a great show, mostly thanks to all of you. Gipper's Picks, Joe Neuenfeld, Rashawn Jones, Wes Roberts, of course, Cleveland fan, Rick Funcannon, MJ, Raph. Love having you all here. Let's do it again tomorrow on behalf of Ben on the 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s. On behalf of Buckets and Mike McClure in the chat, Danny Brasco, Mikey B, the Pampers Parlay. I don't know, maybe it's coming later. My name is Nejad. I'm the Counselor of Cash. And guess what? We rest our case.